Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Well, it's lunchtime, and I had to take a little time to do some unpacking. And there's a little bit to unpack. And I must say, I looked at a program by the young man, Kem Jones, and he was talking about all the supposed viability of Peter David. And boy, oh boy, did he bring the stats. He actually used statistics from 2018 and 2022 to show that all this supposed viability as a candidate of Peter David is actually overrated. And as I said, the young man brought the stats. And I believe that's why the young man has such a good following and went out to say that, hey, look, he believes that he has one of the best podcasts in Grenada. And he boasted a little about it a couple of days ago, but I can understand why that he could actually feel comfortable in doing that. Because the gentleman did a very good analysis today. I strongly suggest that you take a look at it.
1,329 votes. But we want to see what is the difference in 2018. Because in 2018, he got 1,615 people voting for him. A difference of 286. So in 2018, Peter David received 1,615 votes. He beat Claudette Joseph by 826 votes. But in 2022, Peter David got 1,329 votes. So he actually lost 286 votes from 2018. In other words, the amount of people who voted for him in 2022 was 286 less than who voted for him in 2018. That is significant.
So there you go. Listen to this gentleman. Listen to this data carefully.
So the data, if you look at the data and you look at the direction, it is heading. Peter David is losing more support than gaining support. So the data does not support what people are saying about Peter David being popular and Peter David is unbeatable and Peter David is winnable. The data does not substantiate that. In fact, there is a school of thought. Well, two schools of thought. One, if Claudette Joseph had one more week to walk the ground and do the political work in the lead up to the 2022 election, Peter David would have been history.
So you guys heard the young man. And again, that is why this young man have bragging rights. So all you media personalities, dispute what this gentleman has said. Let me see you refute what he has said. And let me see Kennedy Bulldog refute what he has said. Because he's a man also, he like numbers. And let me see Papa Ride Along refute what Kem Jones has said. And I know you guys are on the same team in some respects. But at least Kem Jones is intellectually honest about his analysis of the situation. Even though Keith may not be his favorite guy, and even though he's an NDC guy. But I believe that Kem Jones has a better grasp of the repercussions of Peter David winning the leadership of the NNP Party. I think he has a little more concern about the national interests. I think he has a little more concern about the national implications, about the national interests. And he's just not focused on the benefit that may come to NDC as a result of the demise, possible demise of the NNP Party, depending on which way the leadership goes. In my humble opinion, I don't believe many other media personalities share the same sentiment or is thinking about the collective national interest, but might be a little more partisan when it comes to the politics of the infighting in NNP. And what he showed is basically in 2018, Peter David won by over 800 votes in the tongue of St. George. And in 2022, he only won by a mere 200 and something votes. So in 2018, he won pretty much four times as much as he won in 2022. So if that is not diminishing viability, then I don't know what is. But yet still the gentleman has said that he is the one to lead the NNP and to take the party forward and to recover lost votes. And what I like about the gentleman, what I like about Kem Jones is that he was intellectually honest. He wasn't afraid to be intellectually honest when he was talking about Claudette Joseph. He wasn't afraid to be intellectually honest when he was talking about Peter David. He wasn't afraid to be intellectually honest when he was talking about the NNP. And I understand. He actually is very much positioned to talk about these things because based on what I've heard coming to the end, he actually was part of the NNP and he understands the internal working of the NNP. So he was able to predict, just like in the videos that I've talked about. I am so happy to see that this gentleman has so much clarity. And I understand he's on the ground, so he's seen a lot more things than, let's say, someone like me who would actually see. But he has so much clarity, and he has predicted that Peter David will lose miserably in next Sunday's convention. So that was my suspicion. But I will defer to the gentleman because he was part of NNP. He's on the ground. He actually understands the power of statistics to illustrate what he's saying. So I like the approach. And he wasn't afraid to say that Emlyn Pierre, how viability has diminished a bit. But the difference I would say in terms of Emlyn Pierre and Peter is that Emlyn Pierre doctrinally is most suited for the NNP. She's not tainted by all these past socialist Marxist ideals. And obviously, there's no pretensions on Peter's part. He has not changed. He's a center-left guy. And again, which is something that Kem Jones and I coincide on, is that Peter is not suited for the NNP party. So I am so happy, I am relieved that someone locally is able to see through all of this and has clarity on this issue. So I always say, if Peter believes that he is so competent or capable politically, then now he has an off-ramp. He has a chance to say, look, I'm tired of the infighting in NNP. I'm going to take the off-ramp. I'm going to form my own party. So that way, he can build from scratch and he can give himself an opportunity to show what he is capable of. And then if he does well, he would have unlimited power. I remember I had made a video, one of the first videos I made concerning the NNP struggles. And I remember William Joseph might have looked at the video and he said, he actually went about refuting some claims that I made in the video, not personal claims, but claims made by Kennedy Bulldall as to Peter's viability for the leadership of the NNP. And he said, Kennedy Bulldall believed that Peter was the only one capable of leading the party after Dr. Keith Mitchell exits. But William Joseph actually refuted that. And Kennedy Bulldall was basing it on likability and international connections. And William Joseph actually refuted the international connections piece and said that anyone within the party structure would be able to realize those international connections. So William Joseph was saying this is something unique to Peter David, and international bodies and nations will actually, whoever is in power, will actually reach out to them and vice versa. And those connections can be established by anyone who takes on the leadership of the party if they wanted to do it. So I also took a look at Kennedy Bulldall's interview with Ride Along. And I'm sure there's nothing better that Ride Along would have liked than to have an interview with Kennedy Bulldog. Okay? Whereas Kem might have been a guy who actually would be intellectually honest about everything, I don't know how much Ride Along would have been as intellectually honest when it comes to the issue of crisis in the NNP. Because some people may actually want that crisis to continue. But I gauge a little in Kem Jones, and I hope he doesn't get any flack for that. Because I feel like he was being balanced. I feel like he understands the danger, the clear and present danger with Peter David taking over the NNP party. I think he understands also, which I have said previously, and I hope you have had an opportunity to see the video that I made, that he understands Peter David is not ideologically a good fit for the NNP. So that was really being honest. You know, it took a little bit of courage by Kem Jones to be honest, and we all know where he stands. We all know who he supports. So he kind of went out a bit, and in the interest of Grenada, I think, he actually said things to locals that needed to be said. So that is why I'm tipping my hat to Kem Jones. Yeah, but as I said, I looked at the Kennedy Bulldog Ride Along interview, and Kennedy Bulldog talks so much about the 3 hotels that he actually credits Peter David for bringing into Grenada. I don't know how much of that is true, because it seemed to me the whole infrastructure of the NNP was based on bringing in business into Grenada. I mean, there are a couple of them that they experimented, and some of them failed. So I think it was a culture within the NNP to try to bring foreign investments into Grenada. So I don't know how much of that was actually emanating from Peter David, but you guys might know better than I do. But again, even if he did, this gentleman would not have been, I don't believe he would have been doing it for naught. Because just think about it. This is just my suspicion. I don't know if that is the case, but it's quite possible. In all of the negotiation that takes place for these new enterprises that come into Grenada, there's a lot of legal contracts. There's a lot of stuff that requires a lawyer's signature or a lawyer's review. So I can only suspect that who do you think that these enterprises are going to go to for the legal aspects of these contracts that are necessary when they come to Grenada? So obviously, I believe it's quite possible that the gentleman would be paid. And I'm not even mad about it, but I'm just saying it's quite possible that a lot of the legal work that has to take place for these enterprises to start doing business in Grenada, I am sure, I mean, it's just logical. If Kennedy Bulldog says it is as it is, that that's the gentleman who brought these enterprises into Grenada, then it's quite possible, out of, good gesture and good business relations, that they might have passed the legal work to him. It makes sense, right? So he would not have an incentive to do and bring these businesses into Grenada without some sort of benefit accruing to him. It just makes sense. So he's not doing it for naught. He's not doing it like, because he's so concerned about bringing businesses to Grenada. Not at all. And as I said, a lot of this would have been done in the framework, in the architecture, political architecture of the NNP. Okay, a lot of this would have been done because the NNP had that culture of trying to bring foreign investments into Grenada. So he cannot, and I remember on the Bob report, I think Callan Bob did kind of like checked him on that issue and said, look, you didn't just do this by yourself. You did this at the mercies of Dr. Keith Mitchell in your capacity as someone who was serving in the NNP. So to take credit for that personally, I don't think it's a proper representation. And then again, I understand Kennedy Bulldog. Intellectually, I understand the gentleman. And he does to the politicians what politicians do to people. He actually plays the game that the politician plays with people, and he plays their game. So you notice he's never fully committed to anyone or any party. Kennedy Bulldog seems to be committed to himself, and that's okay. Because, in a den of players like that, you have to be a certain way to survive. And probably that's why he has had such great survivability. He actually even admitted to the fact that he's a disruptor in many cases, in many parties. And he framed it in the sense that, okay, when he feels that the leadership of the organization of which he's a part is going the wrong way, then he tries to check them. And then that gets into some sort of problem, and then he have to exit the organization. So he admits that he has been disruptive to many organizations. So again, in many respects, I admire the guy's cunning, and I ain't knocking it. And again, I like the fact that he plays the games that politicians play. He don't commit to anyone. You know what I'm saying? It's awesome. So it's quite possible that if for some reason Peter David happened to gain some sort of leadership in the NNP party, guess what? It's just a matter of time that he and Kennedy Bulldog are going to butt heads. Then I know Kennedy Bulldog is not a guy who is known for tact and diplomacy at the highest level. He's a straight shooter. You know, he reminds me of the generation of my parents and grandparents. I mean, Grenadians of that generation, they're straight shooters. They tell you as it is. There's not much tact and diplomacy. There's less guile to a certain extent. You know what I'm saying? And of course, that's a generalization, but there's a lot of people that I know and grew up with who are very direct. They shoot from the hip. And he's one of those guys. But there's a time and place for everything. And then in that interview he had with Ride Along, there's so much internal, quote unquote, dirty laundry or bedroom details that he actually exposed during that interview that is taking place in the NNP. And I don't think that it was tactful. I don't think that it was diplomatic. Certain things like that, if you're part of an institution, you would want to keep those sort of things within the institution. You can argue about it among yourself, but to actually expose it in an open platform, I don't think it does anything good for you and your credibility. And I don't think it does anything good for the institution as a whole, because then it kind of betrays when you say that you want to bring the institution together, when you say you want to hold the institution together, and then you say stuff like that. I don't think that works in the favor of holding the institution together. Like there was some things he said about Roland Bowler. And in some ways, he sort of makes it sound like Dr. Keith Mitchell was punking Roland Bowler. And how would Roland Bowler feel about that? So if you're looking to win a convention next Sunday, you want to be Peter's boy, you want to be part of the institution of the NNP, then this is not something that actually should be discussed on an open forum. Because let's say, God forbid, you guys get the leadership of the NNP. How do you reconcile now with Roland Bowler? How do you reconcile with people in the party who you might have slighted and said things, exposed things publicly that they would not have wanted to be exposed? So we got to be a little careful and tactful when we have these interviews. And I'm sure Ride Along was just reveling in it. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure he was enjoying, the fact that in certain respects, Kennedy Bulldog was just going in on the NNP, but again, in the interest of party unity. And that is why I believe it will be very difficult for a Peter David leadership to consolidate the NNP. The bottom line is this. I believe that a Peter David leadership in the NNP would actually destroy the NNP. There would be no more NNP. I mean, this is as clear as daylight, because again, it goes back to what has been said. He is not doctrinally right-leaning. He's not center-right. So his policies, his personal political philosophy would not resonate with the people of the NNP. And I don't see him changing that political philosophy. So what will have to happen is that the structure, the political platform, the political ideology of the NNP will have to change. So there will be no more NNP. This is clear. There will be no more NNP. There will be a transformed party, probably holding the name NNP, but in terms of the ideals and values of the party, it will cease to exist. Period. And if that's what the delegates want, or if that's what the people of Grenada want, then that's what they want. There's an old, 70s or I think early 80s reggae song, give the people what they want. But it would be to their detriment. And that's all I'm going to say on that issue.